The Humble King. Once there was a king who had a wise adviser. Said the king to the adviser, "There is a king who calls himself as a mighty one, and a humble man of truth. That he is mighty, I can tell, because his country is surrounded by the sea, and on the sea stands a fleet of ships with cannons that do not allow anyone to come close. Further in, there are swamps encircling the country, and there is only one narrow path crossing them, wide enough only for one person to pass. Cannons are also positioned there, and when one attacks, they fire the cannons on him, so it is impossible to come close. However, his claim that he is a man of truth and humility, I do not know if this is true. Therefore, I would like you to bring me his portrait." The king had the portraits of all other rulers, but the portrait of this one was unknown to any king, for he is hidden from people, sitting behind a veil, distanced from the people of his country. So the wise man went to the country. He thought to himself that he would need to know the nature of the country. How would he find out the nature of the country? By knowing its humor. For when one wants to know about a certain thing, one needs to know the humor related to that thing. There are several types of humor. There are cases in which a person truly wants to hurt another, and when the other accuses him, he claims, "I was only joking." Then there are cases in which a person truly only intends to joke, and even so, his friend is hurt by his words. There are also various other types of humor. Now, there is one land among all the lands that encompasses all the lands. Within that land is a city which encompasses all the cities of the land which encompasses all the lands. Within that city is a house which encompasses all the houses of that city which encompasses all the cities of the land which encompasses all the land, and there is a man who encompasses all the men of that house, etc. Here there is one who expresses all the mockery and humor of the whole land. So the wise man took a great deal of money with him and went there. He saw that they were expressing a variety of mockery and humor, and he understood from the humor of the country that the country was filled with falsehood from beginning to end. He saw that some of their humor centered around how to cheat and deceive people in business, how when one comes to court it is all falsehood and bribery, and how even when one's case goes to the higher courts, there also all is falsehood. They made comedies of all these things. The wise man understood from all these comedies that the country was full of falsehood and deception, and there was not a bit of truth there. He went and did business in the country, allowing himself to be swindled. He took his case his case to the courts, but they were full of falsehood and bribery. One day he would bribe them, and the next day they would not even recognize him. Then he went to the higher court, but it was also full of falsehood, until he came to the Supreme Court, but they also were full of falsehood and bribery. Then he came to the king himself. When he came to the king, he asked, "Over who are you king? Your country is full of lies, from beginning to end, and there is not a shred of truth in it." He began to recount all the falsehood of the country. When the king heard his words, he pressed his ear against the veil in order to hear better. It was a wonder to the king to find a man who knew of all the falsehood of the country. The ministers who heard his words were enraged, but he continued to recount all the falsehood of the country. Then the wise man added, "And it would be fitting to say that the king is also like them, liking falsehood along with all the others. But in fact, I see that you are a man of truth, and because of that, you are far from them, because you cannot bear the falsehood of the country." Then he started to praise the king exceedingly. But the king was very humble, and his humility accompanied his greatness, for such is the way of the humble. The more he is praised and glorified, the smaller and more humble he becomes. So, because of the magnitude of the praise of the wise man, with which he praised and glorified the king came to extreme humility and smallness until he actually became nothing. The king could not restrain himself and flung open the veil to see the wise man, to see who is this who knows and understands all this. Thus he revealed his face, and the wise man saw him and brought his portrait to his king.